The morning sun poured softly through the gold curtains of Hillcrest Estate, touching the marble floor with streaks of light. Inside the mansion, Madam Veronica Amah-Cole sat at her dining table, elegant, poised, and untouchable. Her lace gown shimmered faintly as she stirred her tea, though she hadn't taken a single sip. The air around her was one of power and quiet unease. Across from her sat Amara Henry Daniels, her closest friend and confidant, a woman of warmth and courage, dressed in soft ankara and gold earrings that caught the light. She leaned forward with that tone women use when their hearts warn before danger. "Veronica, my dear," Amara began carefully, "I don't like how your driver behaves these days. That man, Chinedu, he moves like someone carrying a secret." Veronica's brow arched. "A secret? Amara, you know I don't surround myself with careless people." Amara smiled gently but pressed on. "You're the richest widow in Lakora City. You carry more gold than most men's pride. A loyal servant can turn overnight when desperation whispers. Be careful. He always disappears right after dropping you off, never talks to the staff, never stays a minute longer." Veronica chuckled, but the sound lacked peace. Her heart, though wrapped in diamonds, still beat with human doubt. She remembered it now, how Chinedu, her driver of 3 years, never lingered. No idle chats, no laughter with the gateman, no shared meals in the staff quarters. The moment she stepped inside her mansion, his car would glide away into Lakora's dusk, swallowed by traffic and silence. She brushed it off before. His discipline was refreshing, but now the thought unsettled her. She turned toward the wide glass window, watching the manicured lawns that stretched beyond her gate. "I don't accuse loyalty without proof, Amara," she said finally, her voice low but firm. "But I will watch. If he hides something, it won't stay hidden for long." Amara sighed and reached across the table. "Just don't ignore your instincts. You've built empires by trusting your gut. Let it serve you again." Veronica gave a thin smile, but inside her something shifted. Power had taught her one truth. Trust was more expensive than gold. And she wasn't ready to lose either. Later that evening, she walked into the garage after returning from work. Chinedu Okafor, tall and dark-skinned in his crisp driver's uniform, bowed lightly. His eyes were calm, respectful yet distant, as always. When she stepped out of the car, he said softly, "Good night, ma'am," and without hesitation picked up his small brown leather bag and left through the side gate. She stood there, watching him disappear into the Lakora night. A strange feeling of unease crawled through her veins. For the first time, Madam Veronica Amah-Cole, a woman whose presence could silence a boardroom, felt powerless against curiosity. The rain began to fall softly, tapping against her parked cars and shining floors. She folded her arms, whispering to herself, "Everyone carries a secret, but his feels close to my name." As thunder rolled faintly over Hillcrest, her golden wristwatch ticked steady and accusing. Veronica didn't know yet that the secret beneath her driver's silence was written in her own bloodline. And by the time she uncovered it, nothing in Lakora City would ever look the same. Morning sunlight spilled gently across Lakora City, reflecting off glass towers and the polished hoods of luxury cars on Hillcrest Avenue. Inside one of those cars sat Madam Veronica Amah-Cole, her expression as smooth and unreadable as the tinted glass separating her from the outside world. Her driver, Chinedu Okafor, kept both hands firmly on the steering wheel, his eyes trained on the road, his posture as straight as a soldier's. The silence between them was thick, almost deliberate. Veronica, lost in thought, watched his reflection in the rearview mirror. The more she studied him, the more questions swirled in her mind. He never spoke out of turn, He never smiled unless spoken to. He never lingered after his duties were done. And yet something in his eyes, that faraway, burdened calm, whispered that there was more to his story than he let the world see. She leaned forward slightly, breaking the silence. "Xanadu." He responded immediately, his voice low but respectful. "Yes, madam." "How long have you worked with me now?" "3 years, madam," he said without turning. "And in these 3 years, you've never given me a reason to doubt you," she continued, her tone deliberate. "But tell me something. Why do you always leave so quickly after dropping me off? No staff meetings, no friendly word with the guards. Straight home every day. Why?" For a heartbeat, he didn't answer. His jaw tightened slightly, and she saw the flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt? Fear? Or simply exhaustion? Finally, he said quietly, "I just prefer to go home early, madam. I don't like staying out when there's nothing to do." Veronica's fingers tapped against her handbag, her gaze sharp as glass. "Straight home. Every single evening?" He nodded. "Yes, madam." She leaned back slowly, her expression unreadable. For the rest of the ride, silence filled the car once again, but this time it was heavier. The silence of a woman's instincts awakening. She had been in boardrooms where men hid corruption behind polite smiles. She had watched employees lie with perfect grace. Now she recognized the same calm defense in her driver's voice. When they reached Amah-Cole Holdings, Veronica stepped out gracefully, but before entering the glass doors, she glanced back one more time. Xanadu was still seated behind the wheel, head bowed, both hands resting quietly on the steering. Her golden wristwatch glinted in the sunlight as she whispered to herself, "Even silence has a language." That evening she called Amara Henry Daniels to her study. The room glowed with warm lamplight, and the faint hum of the city drifted through the open window. "Amara," Veronica said, pouring herself a glass of wine, "you were right. Something about that man doesn't add up." Amara raised a brow. "What did you find?" "Nothing yet," Veronica said. "But that's the problem. He's too clean, too careful. A man that cautious either has discipline," she paused, her voice lowering, "or something to hide." Amara sighed deeply. "And what do you plan to do?" Veronica stood and walked to the window, her reflection staring back at her, powerful, poised, and restless. "Tomorrow night. I'll find out for myself." Amara's eyes widened. "You? Follow your driver through Licora traffic at night?" "Veronica, that's madness." Veronica turned slowly, her lips curving into a faint, fearless smile. "Madness built this empire, Amara. If Xanadu is hiding something, I will see it with my own eyes." Her friend groaned. "At least take security." "No," Veronica interrupted firmly. "This one, I must do alone." Hours later, in the privacy of her room, Veronica stood before her mirror. Gone were the lace gowns and jewels. She wore a plain scarf, dark glasses, and a simple wrapper, the disguise of an ordinary Licora woman. On her bedside table sat her husband's gold watch, ticking softly. She fastened it to her wrist, whispering, "Damien, wherever you are, guide me tonight." Outside, the rain began to fall again, soft at first, then harder, as though the heavens themselves were warning her. But Madam Veronica Amah-Cole did not back down. She was about to uncover the secret that had been driving beside her all along, the secret that would turn her power into pain and her suspicion into revelation. Night fell over Licora City like a heavy velvet curtain. The streets glimmered with restless energy headlights slicing through rain, vendors shouting over the hum of traffic, and the faint rhythm of life echoing from distant alleys. But beneath that noise, in the quiet heart of Hillcrest Estate, one woman sits still, eyes on the clock, waiting. Madam Veronica Amah-Cole, wrapped in a plain scarf and a dark coat, looked nothing like the iron-willed business tycoon whose name commanded boardrooms. Tonight she was something different, a hunter of truth, a queen willing to descend into the mud to see what her crown could not. At exactly 8:47 p.m., she heard the familiar sound of her black SUV pulling into the driveway. Chinedu Okafor stepped out, his uniform neat as always. He opened the door for her with quiet precision. "Good night, madam," he said softly, bowing slightly. Veronica pretended to check her phone, delaying. She wanted to see what he would do if she lingered. Minutes passed. He waited patiently, then slowly walked to the driver's seat, picked up his small brown leather bag, and left through the side gate. The moment the gate closed, she whispered, "Open the back gate quietly," to her night guard. A few seconds later, her gray Lexus, the old one she rarely used, rolled silently out of Hillcrest, its tinted windows hiding her identity. The rain fell harder now. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as she spotted the faint red taillights of Chinedu's car ahead. The chase had begun. Licora at night was a creature of contradictions, dazzling skyscrapers on one end, crumbling buildings on the other. She followed him through Marina Boulevard, past neon signs and food hawkers sheltering under umbrellas. The air smelled of roasted corn, petrol, and wet dust. Chinedu's car moved steadily. No haste, no hesitation. "Where are you going, Chinedu?" Veronica muttered under her breath. "Who are you meeting?" Traffic thickened near Palmview Junction, where yellow buses fought for space with motorbikes and impatient drivers. Veronica's heartbeat quickened. For a moment she almost lost sight of his car, but then she saw it again, turning off the main road into a narrower street. The scene changed. The asphalt grew rough. Streetlights flickered weakly, and small wooden stalls lined the road like tired soldiers. Children ran barefoot through puddles. A woman sold akara under a dim bulb, her voice echoing into the night. Veronica's hands trembled slightly on the wheel. It had been years since she last saw this side of Licora, the world that existed beyond marble floors and chandeliers. She whispered almost to herself, "So this is where my driver runs to every night." Her car slowed as she followed from a distance. Chinedu's car finally pulled over beside a broken wooden fence. He stepped out, rain dripping from his short hair, carrying a nylon bag of what looked like groceries and medicine. Veronica lowered her seat and peered through the rain-streaked glass. He walked toward a small, rusted gate and disappeared inside a dimly lit compound. For a long moment, she just sat there, heart-pounding, breath shallow. This was not a bar, not a club, not a secret meeting place. It was a slum. A place soaked in struggle, where survival was the only luxury. "Why here?" she whispered. "Why would a man like him come to such a place every night?" Lightning cracked across the sky. Through the flicker of light, she caught a glimpse of movement inside one of the cracked windows. Chinedu was there, kneeling beside a bed. He handed something from the bag to an elderly woman, her face weary and pale. Then suddenly, a small figure rushed into the room, a little boy, barefoot, laughing as he leapt into Chinedu's arms. Veronica's hand flew to her mouth. She froze. That laughter, that smile, it was hauntingly familiar. The boy's face caught the light. Bright eyes, rounded cheeks, a sharp chin. Her chest tightened. No, that can't be. He looked like someone she had buried in her memory long ago, Obina Amah, her late brother. Her mind raced. How could this be? What connection did her driver have with her dead brother? The rain poured harder, blurring the window, but not enough to hide the truth forming before her eyes, a secret life tied to her own bloodline. As thunder rolled across Rosewood District, Madam Veronica Amah-Cole sat alone in her car, drenched in realization. For the first time in her powerful life, she felt fear not of loss or betrayal, but of truth. The kind that crawls out of the past and knocks on your door when you least expect it. And in that moment, as the lightning illuminated her face through the windshield, she whispered, trembling, "Chinedu, what are you hiding from me?" The rain had softened to a mist by the time Madam Veronica Amah-Cole parked her gray Lexus near the cracked wooden fence. She sat in silence, staring at the dim glow that flickered through the broken window of the house where Chinedu Okafor had entered. Each second that passed deepened the storm inside her chest. The world outside her tinted glass felt foreign, barefoot children running in puddles, women cooking by smoky lanterns, the rhythmic hum of generators filling the humid Lacora night. This was not Hillcrest. This was Rosewood District, a place where life fought for every breath. Veronica lowered her window slightly, the smell of rain and wet dust flooding in. Through the narrow crack, she could hear faint voices, one deep and calm, the other soft and weary. Her heart pounded. She leaned forward, eyes fixed on the window. Inside, Chinedu sat on a small stool beside a frail old woman. Her skin was pale and stretched thin, her breaths shallow. He held her trembling hands and whispered words Veronica couldn't hear, his face illuminated by a small kerosene lamp. Then from the side of the room, a boy appeared, that same child whose face had stopped Veronica's breath earlier. He was laughing now, holding a small toy car made from bottle caps. His joy cut through the sadness of the room like sunlight through clouds. When he ran into Chinedu's arms, the man lifted him effortlessly, his smile wide and genuine, the kind of smile Veronica had never seen on him in all the years he'd driven her. A pang hit her chest. It wasn't anger. It was something far heavier, confusion wrapped in grief. "Who are you, Chinedu?" she whispered. "And why does that child wear my brother's face?" Her mind replayed flashes of Obina Amah, her late brother, charming, reckless, full of dangerous charisma. He had died years ago, leaving behind unanswered whispers about a woman he betrayed. Veronica had buried those rumors with him, choosing pride over pain. Now, through the flickering light of a slum window, those whispers had returned in the laughter of a boy who looked like him. She rubbed her temples, her golden wristwatch glinting faintly under the car's dashboard light. Time. It had always been her ally, marking her progress, her control, her empire. But tonight, it ticked like a reminder that truth doesn't fade with years it waits. The boy suddenly ran to the window. Veronica gasped, ducking low. Her breath caught as he pressed his small palms against the glass, giggling at something outside. For a brief second, their eyes met through the blur of rain. He looked right at her car, directly at her. And in those bright, mischievous eyes, Veronica saw a reflection she couldn't deny. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, Obina, what have you done?" she whispered. The boy turned and ran back inside, his laughter fading into the night. Chinedu helped the old woman lie back, tucking a blanket around her frail frame. He wiped her forehead with a cloth, fed her a spoonful of medicine, then sat beside the child, resting a hand on his shoulder. They looked like family. Not in wealth, but in love, a kind of quiet bond that money could never buy. Veronica's vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. For years she had built walls of marble around herself to keep out pain. But tonight, those walls cracked. She was staring at something purer than her entire empire, a man's loyalty, a child's innocence, and a mother's suffering. Her phone buzzed, breaking the moment. It was Amara Henry Daniels calling. Veronica hesitated, then answered in a whisper. Amara, I found him. Found who? Amara's voice was tight with concern. Chinadu, I followed him. And? Veronica swallowed hard. He's not meeting thieves or criminals. He's caring for a sick woman. And a boy. Amara, that boy, he looks exactly like Obina, my late brother. Silence, then a soft gasp. Veronica. Are you sure? I know my family's face when I see it. That child, he carries our blood. Her voice broke. My God, Amara. My driver has been hiding my own nephew from me. Veronica, Amara said carefully. Listen to me. Don't do anything rash tonight. Leave it for tomorrow. If this is true, you'll need a clear head to face it. Veronica hung up slowly, her heart still pounding. She looked once more through the rain-smeared window. Chinadu was now laughing softly with the boy, the old woman, smiling faintly from the bed. It was a picture of love born from pain. And as the night deepened, Madam Veronica Amah-Cole realized something terrifying. The man she trusted most had been living a life tied to the part of her past she had tried hardest to erase. The rain began again, washing over her windshield like tears from heaven. She gripped the steering wheel, whispering shakily, Tomorrow I will have the truth, even if it breaks me. She started her car and drove away, her reflection fractured by raindrops, her soul heavy with dread. The night dragged long and heavy over Hillcrest Estate. By the time Madam Veronica Amah-Cole returned, the rain had stopped, but its memory lingered in her mind, the sound, the smell, the vision of that frail woman, and that laughing boy who carried her family's face. Her mansion, usually her sanctuary, now felt like a golden cage. The chandeliers seemed too bright, the silence too deep. Every tick of her husband's golden wristwatch echoed through the room like a whisper from the past. You cannot run from your blood. She sank into the velvet armchair in her private study, her reflection trembling in the glass of her wine. Her eyes were red, though she refused to call it weeping. For years she had mastered control over her business, her image, her emotions. But tonight that control was slipping. Her phone vibrated again. Amara Henry Daniels' name flashed on the screen. Veronica answered quietly. Amara, I saw it with my own eyes, she said, her voice breaking. That child, he's not a coincidence. He's my brother's blood, I know it. The resemblance, it's haunting. Amara exhaled slowly. And the old woman? Sick, fragile. But when she looked at him, there was love. The kind that carries years of pain. Amara, I think she's the woman Obina abandoned before he died. A long silence followed. Veronica, Amara said gently, this is bigger than suspicion. You're standing at the edge of something sacred and painful. Don't act tonight. Sleep, pray. Let morning guide you. Veronica stared at her reflection again, the powerful businesswoman who had conquered every challenge except her own heart. Sleep? She whispered bitterly. How can I sleep knowing my brother's child grows up in a slum, cared for by my own driver? She ended the call, her hands trembling. The room felt too small for her grief. She rose and began pacing, the sound of her heels tapping against marble like a heartbeat she couldn't silence. Her mind replayed everything, Chinadu's calm eyes, his silence, his discipline. It all made sense now. He wasn't quiet because of fear or arrogance. He was quiet because he was protecting something, some. She sat back down, closing her eyes, as memories of Obina Amah flooded back her brother's laughter, his recklessness, the gossip she'd ignored about a woman he'd left behind. She'd dismissed it back then. Her family had called it nonsense, rumors beneath them. But now those buried whispers had come alive again, not as gossip, but as flesh and blood, in the form of a boy named Zion. Veronica's tears finally came, hot and slow. She whispered into her hands, "Forgive me, Obina. Forgive me for pretending not to see." She stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the quiet streets of Hillcrest. Somewhere out there, her brother's child slept under a leaking roof while she lived in marble and glass. Her heart broke not just from guilt, but from the realization that wealth had made her blind to the cries of her own bloodline. At dawn, the first light touched Lacora's skyline. The city stirred to life, buses honking, vendors shouting, the distant call of the muezzin blending with birdsong. But inside Hillcrest, Veronica sat at her desk, eyes swollen, resolve hardening. She picked up her inner calm. Her voice was steady now, the tone of a woman who had decided to face her truth. "Tell Chinadu to come and see me, immediately." Her maid's reply was soft. "Yes, madam." Veronica leaned back, closing her eyes briefly. Her pulse thudded in her chest. She wasn't ready, no one ever is, when confronting the ghosts of their own blood. But she had built her empire on courage. And today, courage demanded she look into the eyes of the man who had guarded her family's secret. She touched her golden wristwatch and whispered, "Time to know the truth." Moments later, footsteps echoed in the hall. The door opened quietly. Chinedu Okafor entered, calm, respectful, unaware that the walls around them carried the weight of revelation. Veronica's gaze met his. Cold, sharp, piercing. "Sit down, Chinedu," she said softly. "We need to talk." The air between them grew thick. The mansion that once symbolized power now felt like a courtroom where the truth would either heal or destroy them both. The golden morning light streamed through the glass walls of Amah-Cole Holdings, scattering across the polished floors of the executive suite. But inside Madam Veronica Amah-Cole's private office, the air was still heavy with unspoken truth. Veronica sat behind her mahogany desk, the faint hum of the air conditioner the only sound between them. Across from her sat Chinedu Okafor, hands clasped, eyes lowered, his uniform perfectly pressed, but his heart visibly unsettled. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Veronica broke the silence. Her voice was low, but edged with restrained fire. "Chinedu, I followed you last night." His head jerked up in shock, his lips parting, but no words coming. Veronica's gaze didn't waver. "I saw where you went. I saw the woman. I saw the child." The room seemed to shrink around them. "Now," she continued, her voice trembling slightly, "you will tell me who they are. And you will tell me the truth, every bit of it." Chinedu's throat tightened. He had served her faithfully for 3 years, never crossing a line, never betraying her trust. But now the secret he had protected for almost a decade sat like a stone in his chest. "Madam," he said softly, "please, I did not mean to deceive you." "Deceive me?" Her voice rose, sharp as glass. "You think hiding my own blood from me is not deception? Speak, Chinedu." He swallowed hard. "The old woman. Her name is Mama Chika Okori. Years ago, she was in a relationship with your late brother, Chief Obina Amah." Veronica's breath caught. The name struck her like thunder. "Don't you dare drag my brother into this." "It's the truth, madam," Chinedu said firmly, his voice quivering with conviction. "She loved him deeply. He promised her marriage, but when she became pregnant, he turned his back on her. She begged, she cried. She even went to your family's home, but they sent her away." Veronica's knuckles turned white where she gripped the desk. Her mind flashed back to those days, the hushed conversations, her parents' embarrassment, the whispers she had ignored in favor of her brother's reputation. Her heart thudded painfully. "And the boy?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Chinedu's eyes softened. "His name is Zion Okori. He is your nephew, madam, the son of Obina Amah." The words hit her like a blow. For a moment she couldn't breathe. Zion, her brother's child, the laughing boy with the eyes that mirrored Obina's. Her golden wristwatch ticked loudly in the silence, each beat echoing the weight of years of denial. "How long?" she whispered. "How long have you known?" "Since he was a baby," Chinedu said quietly. "I met Mama Chica while doing community outreach through my church. She was sick even then, raising the boy alone. People mocked her, called her cursed. I couldn't watch her suffer. I began to help small things at first. Food, medicine. When I got this job, I used what I earned to keep them alive." Veronica's vision blurred with tears. "And you never thought to tell me? You who drove me to church, who carried my bags, who watched me sit beside the same God who sees everything." Chinedu's voice broke. "I was afraid, madam. I saw what your family did to her. I feared you'd reject him too, just like your brother did. I wanted to protect that child from more pain." Veronica rose to her feet, trembling. Her heart felt like a storm, pride clashing against conscience. "You had no right," she said through tears. "You took what was mine, my blood, my truth, and buried it in the shadows." "No, madam," Chinedu said softly. "I didn't bury him. I gave him a chance to live, to smile, to know love without shame." The words stilled her. She stared at him, this man she had misjudged, this man who had risked everything for a child that wasn't even his. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Veronica turned toward the window, the Licora skyline blurring through her tears. "All these years," she whispered, "I've lived in marble and silence, thinking my family's sins were buried with Obina, but they were breathing all along in a boy I never knew existed." Her voice softened. "Where is he now?" "At home, madam, with Mama Chica. She's weak, but she fights every day for him." Veronica nodded slowly, her resolve returning, fragile but fierce. "Take me there tomorrow. I want to see them." Chinedu looked up in disbelief. "Madam, are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," she said, wiping her tears. "It's time I face the truth my brother ran from. It's time I bring his son home." That night, Veronica sat alone in her mansion, her reflection flickering in the window. Outside, rain began to fall again, soft and steady, washing away dust, noise, and pride. She whispered into the silence, "Obina, your sin will not end in shame. I will make it right." The golden watch ticked on her wrist, no longer a symbol of power, but of redemption. And in the soft rhythm of its ticking, Veronica felt something she hadn't felt in years, peace rising from pain. The next morning came with a solemn calm. The sky over Licora City hung heavy with gray clouds, as if heaven itself waited to witness a reckoning long overdue. Inside Hillcrest Estate, Madam Veronica Amah-Cole dressed with trembling hands. Gone were her lace gowns and gold jewelry. She wore a simple brown wrapper, a plain white blouse, and low sandals, an outfit so unlike her usual elegance that her maid froze when she entered the room. "Madam, are you going out like this?" "Yes," Veronica said softly. "Today is not for fashion. It's for truth." Her voice, though quiet, carried the weight of resolve. Moments later, Chinedu Okafor stood beside the car at the gate, his eyes lowered respectfully. He had not slept all night. When Veronica appeared, their eyes met two souls bound by guilt, forgiveness, and something unspoken. She nodded once. "Take me to them." The drive through Licora was long and wordless. From the opulent lanes of Hillcrest to the crowded alleys of Rosewood District, Veronica watched the city transform through her window, wealth fading into struggle, order into chaos. Yet each turn of the road peeled away another layer of her pride. When they finally reached the small compound, Veronica's breath caught. The sight of it, the peeling walls, the sagging roof, the puddles at the doorstep, felt like a mirror to the past she had ignored. Mama Chica Okori sat outside on a wooden stool, her thin frame wrapped in a faded shawl. Her eyes lifted slowly, confusion flickering across her face as Chinedu helped Veronica out of the car. "Good morning, Mama," Chinedu said softly. "This is my employer, Madam Veronica." For a heartbeat, silence held the air still. Mama Chica's eyes widened in shock. She tried to rise, but Veronica stepped forward quickly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Please don't get up," Veronica said quietly. "It is I who should bow before you." Mama Chica blinked, unsure she'd heard correctly. Veronica's gaze fell to the small doorway, and there he was, Zion Okori, barefoot, holding a small wooden toy car, his wide eyes glowing with innocence and curiosity. When their eyes met, the world seemed to pause. He tilted his head and smiled shyly, that same smile that once belonged to Obina Ama, the brother she had loved and lost. Tears filled Veronica's eyes. She knelt slowly, her knees pressing into the muddy ground. "Come here, my child," she whispered. The boy hesitated, looking at Chinedu. Chinedu nodded gently, and Zion took slow steps forward until he stood before her. Veronica reached out, her hands trembling, and brushed a raindrop or a tear from his cheek. "You look so much like him," she murmured. "But your eyes, they are kinder." The boy smiled, his small voice innocent. "Are you Papa Chinedu's friend?" A sob escaped her lips. "No, my dear," she whispered. "I'm your family." Behind her, Mama Chica began to cry, soft, broken sobs that years of pain had kept silent. "Madam," she began weakly, "I never wanted trouble. I never wanted to shame your family. I just wanted my son to live." Veronica turned, tears streaming down her cheeks. "And you did, Mama. You gave him life, love, and faith, things we denied you. I came today not as a rich woman, but as a sister who failed you." She knelt beside the older woman, taking her frail hands into hers. "Forgive me. Forgive my family. We cast you aside when we should have embraced you." Mama Chica wept openly now, her tears falling into Veronica's palms. "Child, I forgave long ago. It was your brother I couldn't forget. But seeing you here, I know peace has come." Zion looked between them, confused but gentle. "Mama, are you crying because you're happy?" Veronica laughed through her tears and pulled him close, wrapping her arms around him. "Yes, my love. We're crying because joy finally found its way home." As the rain began again, Chinedu stepped aside, watching the scene with quiet relief. For years he had carried the weight of this secret alone. Now the truth had set not only him free, but the hearts of those bound to it. Veronica rose slowly, her hand still on Zion's shoulder. "From today," she said firmly, "you will not live in the shadows of my brother's mistake. You are an Ama, by name and by blood. I will see to your schooling, your future, and your mother's care." Mama Chica covered her face, sobbing harder. "God bless you, my daughter. Your brother will smile from heaven." Veronica looked up at the dark clouds gathering above, the rain washing her tears away. "Let him smile," she whispered, "because today the curse of pride ends." Chinedu lowered his head, emotion thick in his voice. "Madam, you've done more than I ever hoped." Veronica turned to him, her eyes soft but commanding. No, Chinadu. You are the one who did what my brother and I failed to do. You protected our blood when we abandoned it. You are not just my driver. You are family. For the first time in years, the mighty Veronica Amah-Cole smiled not with pride, but with peace. And as the rain continued to fall softly over Rosewood District, 3 lives stood under its cleansing touch, one healed by forgiveness, one redeemed by loyalty, and one destined to carry the light of a forgotten name. The following week, Hillcrest Estate woke to a quiet transformation. The mansion that once echoed with cold authority now felt alive with something softer laughter. In the grand courtyard, Zion Okori ran barefoot across the tiles, chasing a white dove that had landed near the fountain. His laughter rang through the air, pure and unguarded. By the veranda, Madam Veronica Amah-Cole watched him, tears glistening in her eyes. She smiled, her heart swelling with something she hadn't felt in years, peace that came from truth. Behind her, Mama Chika Okori, now dressed in a clean floral gown, sat wrapped in a shawl, her frail hands holding a cup of tea. Her body was weak, but her spirit had found strength again. She looked around the mansion, the carved pillars, the gentle hum of life, and whispered, "Your home is beautiful, my daughter. But your heart, that's the true mansion God rebuilt." Veronica turned, eyes soft. "No, Mama. It was broken until I met you again." Inside the living room, Chinedu Okafor stood quietly, speaking to one of the household staff. When Veronica entered, he bowed respectfully, but this time she didn't wave him off as an employee. She approached him with quiet dignity. "Chinedu," she said, "you gave my family something we didn't deserve, protection and grace." He looked down modestly. "I only did what was right, madam." She smiled faintly. "Then the world needs more men who do right without reward." She reached into her handbag and handed him an envelope. He frowned slightly. "Madam, please, I don't need—" "It's not money," she interrupted softly. "It's ownership papers for a house in Palmview Crescent. You'll live there with your family. I won't have you remain in hardship while I live in abundance." Chinedu's voice trembled. "Madam, I don't know what to say." Veronica touched his shoulder. "Say nothing. Just keep driving your life with the same honesty you've driven mine." For the first time since he'd met her, Chinedu smiled not as a servant, but as a man whose worth had finally been seen. Later that afternoon, Amara Henry Daniels visited. She found Veronica seated under the hibiscus trees, Zion asleep on her lap. "So this is the boy who changed everything," Amara whispered, smiling. "Oh, yes," Veronica said, brushing Zion's hair gently. "He reminded me that love is louder than shame, that family isn't built on wealth but on forgiveness." Amara sighed, her eyes glistening. "Veronica, I've seen you fight wars in boardrooms, but this is the first battle you've won in your heart." Veronica chuckled softly. "And it's the only one that ever truly mattered." The wind stirred the trees gently, carrying with it the sound of children playing beyond the gates, the distant echo of the city's pulse life moving forward. As evening fell, Veronica stood at the balcony of her mansion, gazing over Lacora City. The skyline shimmered under the orange glow of sunset tall towers and hidden slums sharing one horizon. She clutched the golden wristwatch on her wrist, once a symbol of time's cold passage, now a reminder that grace has its own timing. Oh, behind her, Mama Chika's gentle voice carried softly, "God let your brother fall, so you could rise in ways he never could. Redemption doesn't erase pain, it sanctifies it." Veronica closed her eyes, letting those words settle deep into her spirit. "I thought wealth protected me," she whispered, "but it only blinded me." What saved me was love, the kind I never had to buy. She turned back to the sound of Zion's laughter echoing down the hall, his small feet thudding against marble as Chinadu chased him playfully. A faint smile crossed her lips. For the first time since Damien Cole's death, Hillcrest Mansion didn't feel empty. That night, Veronica gathered them all. Mama Chica, Chinadu, Amara, and little Zion in her candlelit chapel at the back of the estate. The scent of rain and candle wax filled the air as they held hands in silent prayer. "Lord," Veronica said softly, her voice breaking with emotion, "thank you for uncovering what I was too proud to see. Thank you for forgiving what I couldn't admit. Let this home, once ruled by silence, now breathe truth and love." When she opened her eyes, Zion smiled at her and whispered, "Auntie Veronica, you don't look sad anymore." She laughed through tears and pulled him close. "That's because, my child, I finally found what was missing." As dawn broke the next morning, the rain-washed city gleamed under a sky of pale gold. Veronica stood by the window, watching light spill over Hillcrest Estate. Her golden watch ticked softly, not as a reminder of time lost, but of grace restored. The wheel of life had turned full circle. The driver she once suspected had become her protector. The child she never knew had become her redemption. And the woman, once defined by pride, had been reborn through love. In the end, Veronica thought, smiling at the sunrise, we are all passengers of time, but only those who forgive ever reach home.